Good morning. Thanks for attending. Nice to see you, Viet, Stefan, Desire. We'll wait a little bit longer, see if anyone else shows up. Nice to see you, Susan. All right. All right, let's go ahead and get started. All right. So what we're going to go over is how to import your data and set up your database. So the first part of importing your data is to take a look at your spreadsheet of data. And here I have a sample spreadsheet that we're going to go over. And if you look, you want to have just one tab in your spreadsheet. And the very first line, very first row, you want to have your column names. So here we have first name, last name, company, email, phone, address, state, city, and we added a custom field of DUNS. So you don't want any data below, you don't want any headers above. You just want your headers and then your actual data below that, and then nothing below your data, nothing above your data. So after you have your data in this format, you want to go into Soffront, and under Settings, click on Database. And then click on Accounts. And then here is the database setup. So what you want to do is go through your spreadsheet and make sure that you have all these fields in your database. So you see we have first name, we have last name down here. I want to make sure that all these we can match it up with something in our database. And if we don't, then we need to go ahead and add it. So if we just left click on any existing field, it brings up a menu, which is kind of like a right click, but in this case it's actually a left click brings up this menu. So what we'll want to do is, if there's something that we don't have in our database, we need to go ahead and add it. So we would select Insert Field, and then where it says Field Name, we have a list of different custom fields that we can choose from. So each of these say Custom Field, and afterwards there is a number in a parentheses. This is the number of characters, that the maximum number of characters that this field can contain. So we select one of these, and this is going to be a text field. So custom field 1, 255. This is a text field. See, this is field type text, and with a maximum number of characters of 255. And then we go ahead and give that field a name under the field label, and then we also just type the same thing under the description. So we have a number of check boxes below that. So you're going to check the box if you want it to be required, and you see a number of fields are in a color red. Those are the required fields, so it will make that field red if it is a required field, and that way you want it to be required if this is something you absolutely want them to import. If someone is adding a new record to the database, you want to make sure that every single time they they do add that field, you're going to check the box to make it required. We have non-editable if you don't want anyone to ever edit this field. Add to list if you want a list of multiple, for example, industry. You may have different industries and it's always the same every time. So that would be a good example of a list field. Check the box for phone if you want it to be a phone field. Email if it's email. Add to quick add will give a little box when you're adding you can add actually a new entry to a list. So if you wanted them to be able to add a new industry in that example, then you would also check the box, add to quick add and add to list. So most of the fields that you're going to be adding, the custom fields, are going to be text, but there are some additional types of date, and then there's also one called integer. So we have an example here for number of employees. If I click on this and click on edit, we'll see that I selected the type of field as integer in this example, and this is for the number of employees. So if the field that you're going to be importing is a field that you want to do some sort of calculation on, a number that you want to do some sort of calculation on, then you're going to want to select that custom field of integer and give it a name and description. And let me show you an example as to why or how you would use that type of a field. So we have a filter here for greater than 10 employees. So in this, I selected that field number of employees, and I said is greater than 10, and also in this example, I'm saying is equal to Las Vegas. So with an integer field, you have these options to say is greater than or equal to, is less than or equal to, contains, does not contain. So for a text field, these are the options that you get: contains, does not contain, is equal to, is not equal to, or is empty. So as you can see, if I selected a text field for that that database field of a number of employees, all I could select was contains or does not contain or is equal to, and that would not accomplish what I want to accomplish with that field, to say is greater than 10 employees, is less than 10 employees. Of course, you can use any value you want, but I wouldn't be able to say is greater than or is less than. All I would be able to do is contains or does not contain. So I wouldn't be able to accomplish the appropriate filters with that field. So that's why it's important to make sure, if you do have a number and you do want to use that number for some sort of a calculation, then you need to think ahead and make sure you make that an integer field. But for example, in this case, I have a DUNS number. So this is not a number that I would do any sort of calculation on. They are just numbers, but in reality, it's only going to be a text field for the DUNS number. It would only be number of employees or something where you have to do some sort of calculation on that you want to make sure that that is an integer field. And then these filters, you can use filters such as this to send out different campaigns, for example, broadcast campaigns or even automated campaigns, where you can use this kind of logic to send those emails to the appropriate people that you're targeting. So if we go back to our database, so we've selected, we have our number of employees, we have all of our different fields, we've matched everything up, we see that we have everything that we need, we've added our fields of DUNS and everything that we need. So the next step after you make your changes here, you always want to hit save. And then you want to go back to your home screen and go to import. Now, you can import your contacts from Google, you can import it from a CSV file, or you can import from Excel. In this example, we're going to import from Excel. And the next step is to choose that file that we're going to be importing from. And we're going to select a group. So you may want, maybe all these came from a particular industry. You may want to put them into a group according to your industry. You may want to have different spreadsheets. Maybe separate your spreadsheets out according to different industries, and make sure that they're all fairly similar, because the next step is you're going to select your workflow. The default workflow is the accounts workflow, but you can create different workflows. And let's take a look at workflows. So if we go over to workflows and select our accounts workflow, we have different stages in our workflow: lead, contacted, prospect, customer, and we have different tasks that we have assigned to each stage in the workflow. So you can also create additional workflows and have different accounts and different workflows. But as we're importing, we're selecting our accounts workflow, and here are those same stages that I showed you earlier in the workflow. So you can select what stage that you want each of these in your spreadsheet to be at in that workflow. So again, you may want to group them together according to what stage they're going to be at. Maybe have one spreadsheet with all customers, maybe one with all leads, because this is going to put them in that stage in the workflow. And then you're also going to have a common source for each of these. So you select your source, you check the box. We don't want you to spam your customers, because if you spam your customers, other customers are going to have issues not being able to send emails to their customers. So it affects everyone when you do that. So check this box, make sure that you do have permission to send these customers email. And then when you hit select, now you're provided with some additional information on this screen. So here it says column 1 through 9. Those correspond with your column 1 through 9 in your spreadsheet. So this is the same. These are those headers on the left-hand side here. Over to the right, it says map to CRM field. So a couple of things that you can do here. Initially, you can just click on Auto Map. And what Auto Map is going to do is it's going to look at all these column names that you have on the left and see if any of them matches to an exact same name in your database. Now, you don't necessarily have to have them as the same name. If you do, then if you hit the auto map, then they're going to show up automatically. So you see first name is mapped to the first name in our database. Last name is mapped to the last name. But if we go down through this list, we see one of them says none, because this does not have the same name. If we go in here and we see what it maps to, where it should map to, we see address 1 is what it's called in our database. And then in the spreadsheet, it's called address. So we manually hit the drop down and we selected that. Now everything has the same name. So if you're going to be importing data on a regular basis with a similar mapping, what you want to do is click on Save Mapping, and what you'll do is you'll give it a new name, type in the name, and then next time when you click when you want to do this import, you'll click on Use Save Mappings, and you see I've saved this mapping several times here. So you'll select the mapping and hit select, and it's going to map them the way you typically map them. And then you can also delete mappings. If, like me, you have a whole bunch of mappings you don't need, you can go in here and delete some of these different mappings. So, and you can create different mappings. Maybe you have one for a particular industry that you do on a regular basis, and you can give that a name. So you can set up different mappings in here that you use on a regular basis. And then if we scroll down, we see the system is also going to check for duplicates, and it's going to check by default by the email address, but you can also select the company, and it's not going to import any duplicates. You also have the option to import and mark as duplicate, or to update. Let's say you have some additional information that you want to add, maybe a new field that you didn't have in the past, so you can update that information in your database. So once you have all of this set up, you go ahead and click on import, and it tells you it's going to import these records into your accounts and contacts. You always want to select your accounts and contacts. So the accounts you can think of as sort of like companies, and contacts are additional people, different contacts at those companies. So it's going to group them together by the company. So you have one account contact, which is sort of your main contact for that company, and then you have additional contacts that will follow underneath that. So once you're ready to go, you click on OK, and it says 0 of the 5 were imported because it found 5 duplicates, and that's because I've already imported this information into the database. If you go into accounts, we see all those contacts are already imported in here. And if we go into our accounts, we see here's up above, here's where we select where they are in the workflow. We have our data. We can customize this data. We can add different fields to the left-hand column. Check the box to show the labels on the side. We have our notes, our contacts, our appointments, different tasks on the right. We can switch to different stages in the workflow up above. So that's how you import data into the CRM. So one thing you want to make sure is that you don't have any special characters, any hashtags or @ symbols or commas. You want to clean up your data, because you won't be able to successfully import it if it's not just clean data like you see here. So does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, you can type it into the chat section. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, daniel.coleman@soffront.com, and I'll answer any questions you have, or you can just call the 800 number. And if you guys need any help with any import, you can schedule a training session with me, and we can help you out. Everyone have a great day, and see you soon. See you next week.